Now only $89. All the projects have a starting point. Start with Lowe's. While supplies last, Seashore for details. That's actually why Colin is taking days off. He's working in his yard. I know. Good. I'm glad that Rachel caught
Colin
that.
Doesn't do his own yard work. Come on.
I've been to his house. There is a little bit of a yard in the backyard.
Some shrubs?
There are some shrubs, but I do not think he's got the Edward Scissorhands thing going in the back at all. Oh, he was up in Canada. He was up in Europe.
Where is he in Canada?
He was a Whistler. And I only know it's not because I'm stalking him.
Beautiful place.
He tweeted out that it was beautiful yesterday. I was at the beach because I had the cowherd schedule without Speak for Yourself yesterday. I'm like, man, this is great. This is living, right? And he's like, yeah, I'm up in Whistler. I was like, well, I'm at the beach with my little guy. Anyway, so cowherd up in Whistler. He'll be back start of next week. The other voice you're hearing is that of the lovely and talented Rachel Bonetta. We'll get to her with the news in a second. Speaking of news, Daryl Morey kind of made some news yesterday. He was on the Dan Patrick Show on Fox Sports Radio, and he had this to say on why he believes LeBron James is the best basketball player ever.
You just look at his ability to, generate wins and championship probability over time and basically break that down. And obviously you don't need all the numbers. You can watch as well and see that. But if you basically isolate that and also look at the career he's had, frankly, I think at this point it's become a bit of a big margin actually where he's come out ahead. I know that's a little controversial.
Yeah, no, listen, he's very matter of fact in the way in which he says LeBron James is the greatest ever by a sizable margin. The problem with that is it takes away from the idea that the sport hasn't completely changed. Stat guy in baseball might work long term, right? Even though they changed the height of the mound. Of course, there was a time in which there was the color barrier in baseball. But stats you can translate because generally the rules, even though the strike zone has changed and evolved, the distance of the fences, the equipment, it's still wood bats. It's still a baseball. I do think they fly more. But that's one of the things the steroid era destroyed, which was the historical basis of baseball. Because there's this massive spike in the middle. It's like, spike! And then all of a sudden, back down, and now back on kind of similar trends from years past. Basketball is different. It's a completely different sport than it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago. I pointed this out earlier in the week, but one of the things that people miss on in discussing why Daryl Morey was able to win that trade with the Oklahoma City Thunder and land James Harden was because the Thunder would not part with Serge Ibaka. And in hindsight, that seems to be the dumbest decision in the history of the sport, right? Serge Ibaka or James Harden, it ain't even close. Kendrick Perkins, they acquired, or James Harden, it ain't even close. Forget about the luxury tax. The point was, at that point in time, in order to win an NBA championship, you had to beat the Lakers. And the Lakers had Pau Gasol and Andrew Bynum. And Pau Gasol and Andrew Bynum would never play at the end of an NBA Finals or NBA Conference Finals game at all for the Rockets or for the Warriors. You couldn't have them on the court the way the sport is played now. You want to know how much the sport has changed? Here you go. Charles Barkley had a team in 92-93. 92-93, playing for Paul Westphal, that led the league in scoring and that also had the best record in the West. They won 62 games, right? Scored 113 points a game. For the season, they shot 1,095 threes. 1,095 threes. Last year's Houston Rockets, right? Last year's Houston Rockets finished with the best record in the NBA. They also, by the way, won 65 games. They're the number 2 scoring team in the league. They averaged 112.4, slightly below that of the Phoenix Suns. They shot 3,470 threes, more than 3 times as many threes. The sport has completely changed. And so while he's saying, like, look, I'm a stat guy, I'm dealing with win probability. First of all, LeBron has been in the Eastern Conference. And we could go through it time and again, but it's basically a JV conference during the 8 years. And he played on a super team when he was in Miami. It wasn't just that the conference was down. It was that he took Chris Bosh from Toronto, a playoff team, and added him to Dwayne Wade's franchise that had won an NBA Finals, and then also destroyed Cleveland, who was a 60-win team, right? They destroyed Cleveland, destroyed Toronto, and built up a super team in Miami as Boston was aging, and then eventually added Ray Allen as well, right? So you're playing with a stacked deck against a bunch of minnows where the Sharks are in the West. Look, for me, it's not that I'm not mobile off of the Jordan is the greatest ever point. Jordan is the best player. Right? But there's all kinds of different parts of the stats to which they skew to help LeBron. He didn't go to college. So he had 3 years on Jordan that Jordan could never get back. Jordan retired after winning a championship. So you had a season in his prime and really a season and a half. And no, he didn't win a championship when he came back from playing baseball. And he looked like a guy who had been playing baseball when they lost to the Miami Heat. But the idea that that's the same stance that people take when they go, well, Jordan, 6 finals wins, no losses, 6 finals MVP, has to be the GOAT. Well, basketball has never been purely about the stats because, and this is where basketball and football are more alike than basketball and baseball are. Stats have changed, completely changed over the last 10 years. A great season for an NFL quarterback used to be 3,000 yards. Right? Now it's 4,000 yards. And even, I think 3 years ago, we had, 14 quarterbacks that threw for 4,000 yards? You can go win probability. That's great. But similar to the Patriots, if you're playing against a division in which you're almost guaranteed to have, 5 wins a year, that propels you closer to that double-digit win total. Look, you can tell me that LeBron is the greatest ever because he's gotten to all these consecutive finals. And you look at how he carried a team that wasn't a top seed either the past couple of years to the NBA finals. And they came back from 3 games to 1 down to the Warriors. That's fine. You can say that. But if you want to say, well, it's like win probability. Look, the difference between LeBron and Jordan and maybe even Bird or Magic to actual basketball people is the simple concept of you give a guy the ball, you give the best player at the end of a game, wants the ball, has the ball, and is willing to take and make the big shot. And there are times in LeBron's career to which he would prefer to facilitate than to get it done himself. Some of that did change this year out of necessity. And that's why you can come off of the Jordan point if you want. Let's see what he does in the West. Granted, he's not in his prime anymore. Let's see what the win probability here, what the win total is here. Because if you do take wins, you also have to take losses. He did lose in all those finals. And he wasn't always the number 1 seed in the regular season. That did happen. He is responsible for the losses if you give him responsibility for the wins. I would still list Jordan. He can go with LeBron. I don't think it's a big gap because he's using his stats to back it up. Because if you use stats to back it up, shouldn't his stats, the Rockets were right to shoot and miss 27 consecutive 3-point shots. Those same stats that tell you at the end of the day, we will win playing this style haven't proven to be true. You still do need mid-range jump shots. You still do need post-ups. That still is the way to win at times in the NBA. Stats be damned. It's not the end-all be-all in basketball, in football, as opposed to how it might be in baseball. Let's get to Rich Bonetto with the news.
No. Turn on the news. This